welcome to Washington. I'm still reporting on the economy. Well, the crisis atmosphere continues here in Washington as the opening battle in the 2012 presidential contest rages on between those wascally Republicans and those dastardly Democrats. My advice to both parties, try to lose this contest, because whatever you do will not work, and the winner will be blamed for the economic disaster which is as inevitable as tomorrow's sunrise. So our last report got a lot of new attention, not just from the monetary reform community, but from a larger audience, one not well acquainted with the realities of our economic situation. So I've gotten numerous questions as a result, so let's address them now. To recap for the first-time viewers, none of the solutions being debated in Congress can possibly fix this problem. The basic problem that nobody talks about is that our money is created out of debt, and it doesn't have to be that way.
You must understand that every penny, every dollar we have in circulation is created as an interest-bearing debt.
The government, a government agency of some kind, should take charge of the money supply.
But that's not the way it is now in Great Britain.
No, not in any country. It's almost all over the world. The bulk of the money supply is now created by commercial banks as debt.
The truth is that nations don't have to borrow. Nations don't have to have a national debt. That's just a scam that keeps the debt ever climbing. Austerity, that is spending cuts, will never fix this. To cut spending will reduce GDP. Raising taxes will never work either. Taxation is a known GDP killer. So Congress is in this delusional box with no way out, apparently. But there is a way out. No more national debt. Step one, instead of using these colorful pieces of paper with the green seal, Federal Reserve notes, for our money system, every dollar of which is borrowed into existence, we can use these red-sealed U.S. notes, created without debt nearly a century before the Federal Reserve Act came into being. These were called greenbacks. Pay off the national debt with these, and you are free of the big bankers forever.
The government's mentality in general seems to be, we'll do what we have to do and we'll worry about paying for it later. But what you could do is pay for it now. In other words, you don't have to pay for it later. You don't have to pay for it with debt. You can just pay for it with money.
Step two, outlaw government borrowing. When nations are indebted to banks, banks are in subtle control over the political process. This has been known for centuries. That's it. That's all we need to do. Right now, the interest on the debt, according to the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, will exceed $1 trillion by year 2020. That's twice what the discretional budget of Congress is today. These interest payments are entirely unnecessary, and that's what's killing the economy.
The other day I heard a senator on TV say the trouble with General Motors, they have too much debt. And so the solution is to give them another big loan. Well, you can't borrow yourself out of debt. General Motors can't, you and I can't, the federal government can't. Nobody can borrow themselves out of debt. No more than, like I said before, you cannot drink yourself sober. And that's what we're all trying to do.
Now let's look at the objections. Number one, issuing debt-free money from Congress will cause hyperinflation. This is one I hear most often. The answer? Not if you don't print too much of it. Inflation is caused by too much money. If that's all we have to do to make this work, is that too much to ask? Number two, if you give those wascally wabbits in Congress the money power, they will surely print too much of it. Answer, maybe, but at least they are electable. When was the last time the head of J.P. Morgan stood for election? Never. The big banks currently are in complete control over the quantity of money, although the Fed still pretends that it is. So you don't trust Congress? Okay, that's fair. Until we get the money power away from the big bankers, I don't either, because they have been studying how to buy up votes in Congress for centuries.
And if it's a question of a national election, they will want to manipulate decisions about the money supply in favour of keeping them in power. That seems to me, you can't ignore that fact. It's a fact of life.
So, monetary reformers have been proposing this fix for that problem for years now. Split the money power in half. Congress sets inflation targets like 2% per year to cover population growth, but the folks who actually oversee how that money is created is a separate group of people, elected or appointed by each state legislature. Now that's deconsolidating the money power, and I'm all about deconsolidation of power at every level of government, from international down to local. This would give the states some real sovereignty back.
And I think that that's the situation that the Central Monetary Authority should be in. It should create the money debt-free, and it should give it to the government to spend into circulation.
That also answers another objection. They say that this is socialism. Not at all. I'm all about deconsolidation of power, not consolidation of power. Number 3, why don't we hear about monetary reform as a possibility on the TV news? Answer, because the big television media are beholden to the biggest banks for loans. They are just as mortgaged to the hilt as every American homeowner. I have 2 friends who recently lost their jobs as network executives because the network was told by one of the big 5 New York banks that they had to lay off 100 of their top executives or they wouldn't re-up their loans, and that would close the network overnight. The big banks are calling the shots of the TV news. They don't care whether the networks talk about right, left, up, or down. They just don't want America to know that all their money is created out of debt and that we could fix all our problems by simply printing our own money instead of borrowing it all at interest. So let's replace these Federal Reserve notes with these U.S. notes with the red seal. Then we can use these to pay off the debt as it comes due and escape their debt money system forever. Or we can pay off the deficit and the national debt in quarters. I'm still reporting on the economy. Good evening.